I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of us for these meetings that we have organized as Kenya Private Schools Association that is going on across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware that this has been a very difficult period. So as Kenya Private Schools Association, we have no choice but to listen to what you are saying and then act appropriately. Because as we've always said, the national office does not have the monopoly of knowledge. We have to get the real experience from our members, what they're going through, and digest that to a report that will now engage the right body. Today, as we speak, the report that we have in our office about private schools is that 223 private schools, as of 6th of November 2020, have closed shop completely. Those are members of the association. They have informed us that they will not be resuming when the schools eventually reopen fully. The reason being the challenges that they have gone through because of COVID. These 223 schools had a student population before COVID, before closure, of 55,600 learners. 55,600 learners with a student population, with a staff of 1,206. And these are the ones that have just reported to us that they are closing. This is a challenge that we now need to ask ourselves, what is it that is in it for us in as far as COVID and our sustainability as private schools is concerned? What is it that needs to be done? Who should do it? And how should it be done? That's why this meeting was called by the National Health Committee, so that we can together discuss, share experiences, and at the end of the day, propose solutions that we can all work with. The President has already pronounced himself and given directions that the other levels will reopen in January of 2021. Now, this decision not to reopen the other levels remains a big challenge to the management and sustainability of private schools. And we are asking ourselves as private schools, under the current situation, where primary schools are operating at 18%. In primary schools, we have two levels that are in session, grade 4 and class 8. And ordinarily, we have playgroup, PP1, PP2, grade 1 through to class 8, 11 levels. So opening two levels is at 18%. And in secondary schools, we have 4 levels. Opening only Form 4 means that the secondary schools are operating at 25%. Ladies and gentlemen, the big question is, what next for us? What is the next course of action? What is it that needs to be done? Because this indeed is a big challenge. As we speak, private schools are getting money, I don't know from which other sources. Hello? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know where private schools are getting this money. Because you cannot be able to invest with the money that you are getting in terms of school fees. So we discussed and said we need to change even the discussion that we're having with government about the support for private schools. And I want to thank the government because of the 7 billion that they promised to give us, which at the moment still remains a promise. And we are asking ourselves, private schools that are in session today, operating grade 4 and class 8, even if we were to give them a very flexible credit facility, how are they going to repay that money? With this in mind, we urge all our members, wherever they are attending this meeting, to share their experiences on reopening of grade 4, class 8, and Form 4, and give suggestions recommending possible way forward under the circumstances. One of the things that I also want to appreciate that the government agreed is on issues of transition. Because we in the private sector, when the pronouncement was made that there will be repetition, we felt that that was going to be unfair to the child. It was not going to be good for education. And I made it very clear in the people that we were engaging at that time, that if it is about private schools, then repetition will be good for us, because we will retain an extra level, which means extra income for private schools. But we are not looking at the benefit for private schools. We are looking at what is good for our children and what is good for our country and for our education. And that was issues of transitioning, allowing our children to transition. And therefore the decision to repeat or to call 2020 a lost year was set aside. And we have agreed that all learners will have to transition. Whichever way we have to go about it. We may want to spread it so that we normalize after 2 years or 1 year, but children will have to transition. We'll have to find a way of ensuring that within 1 year, 2 years, we have transitioned our learners. Examination timetable is something that we also need to look at and ask ourselves, what is it that needs to be done? For us as an association, we are saying, let us continue having March as our examination dates for KCP and KCSE. Then we sort out the other challenges around that. So we support that the examination continue, but then we sort out the other challenges around that. We do not want to have a situation where we are now shifting and saying, because of A, B, C, and D, let us take examinations to July or to September. No, we want to make sure that exams happen in March, but then all the other issues, we sort them out around the March examination date. The challenge we face as private schools are so many. And I know there are very many challenges that we have faced. We have challenges of finance, we have challenges of human resources, issues of transition, I've mentioned about that, issues of online learning, issues of investing in COVID-19 management infrastructure and essential supplies, the health system, challenges for addressing medical issues that arise because of COVID and all that. But I would want to just address a few issues and probably give you information about what is happening in as far as some of these challenges are concerned. The issue of finance. And finance is indeed a very critical component in the success of private schools operations. And Kpsa has engaged a number of ways in an effort to support private schools. Because we know very well that private schools depend entirely on school fees that is paid for by parents when learners are in session. And we do not have any other source of income. Now, since March, up to this point in time, and going into January, we are not going to get any income. Very many schools, and that's why a number of our schools have shut down, because they're unable to pay rent, sustain their staff, invest in necessary infrastructure for COVID management, and very many other things. So what is it that we need to do? And that's why even as Kenya Private Schools Association, we have decided that we also need to look at other ways, because when our members cough, Kpsa catches cold. Yeah? So we've decided to also look at how best can the Kenya Private Schools Association work with its members to look at alternative ways of generating income while supporting their activities, and at the same time continue lobbying for the association, for its members. And that's why through Madam Butura, Joram, and the National Youth Committee, they have formed and launched what we are calling the Kenya Private Schools Insurance Agency as an alternative in terms of generating income to support the activities of the association, so that we can continue lobbying for the association. So the issue of finance, how are we addressing it as a national office? We've looked at 4 ways of how we are going to sort out this particular challenge. And one of them is looking at the national government and what the national government is going to do in terms of supporting the private schools. We have looked at the issue of county government, we have looked at the issue of National Assembly, and we have looked at engaging commercial banks. And here we are working very closely with KCB. On the issue of the national government, the Kenya Private Schools Association engaged the government in terms of the support that they can be able to give to the private sector. We engaged the government, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Finance, and our proposal was taken to Cabinet, and the Cabinet committed to supporting the private schools. And they promised to give private schools 7 billion shillings. And that proposal was forwarded to the Ministry of Finance so that they can look for funds. So as we speak, the Ministry of Finance is still looking for the funds, the 7 billion, and how that money is going to go to the private schools. Remember, this is not a grant. What we were promised is a low interest credit facility for private schools, so that we're able to access it in a manner that is affordable, very flexible, longer moratorium, longer repayment period, so that we are able to get back to our feet and continue expanding access to quality education. So as we speak, that still remains a promise. An engagement with the Treasury, and they told us that they still remember that issue of the stimulus package, and they're still working. So we are still working with the national government, and we hope that in the fullness of time, because when we were discussing this, we had January in mind. But then when we realized that we can reopen, then the Ministry of Finance also got a little bit challenged, because now it came too fast for them. But we want to make sure that come January, this particular promise goes through, so that our private schools can be able to benefit from it. Another thing that we are also doing is to engage the county governments, because we've realized that a number of our schools, being businesses licensed by the county governments, there are a lot of rates, levies that the county governments want from us. But we have agreed, we have had several meetings with the Council of Governors, and we have agreed that we need to develop a position that will be adopted by the various counties across the country in terms of what is it that needs to be done. At the moment, all our schools have been asked not to operate, meaning that our business remains shut. So how are we expected to generate resources to pay for these levies and these bills? So the Council of Governors have agreed that for 2021, they are going to give us some consideration so that we reduce on the financial obligations that private schools are facing. And that will be communicated so that the county chairs can take up that matter and engage the specific counties, because we in Kpsa will be engaging the Council of Governors, and once we have agreed, that will be cascaded to the county chairs, so that now they can now engage the county governments on the specific issues of what has been agreed at the national level. Number 3, we have been engaging the National Assembly on how the private schools can be supported. Remember, there was a time we had approached the National Assembly with a view to having them consider budgeting and providing for capitation funds for children in private schools. That particular proposal has been dragging in the National Assembly, though it had received a lot of positive response. But at this point in time, we have gone a step further to even suggest an amendment to the Basic Education Act to provide that the government will provide capitation funds for all children in basic education institutions, whether they are in public or in private, so that primary schools can be able to get the capitation funds, as well as children in secondary schools. And this will lessen some burden on parents who take their children to private schools. So we are waiting for what we are calling the miscellaneous amendment bill to go to Parliament, with amendment that we have already drafted. It has already been factored in the Basic Education Act, and we hope that when the miscellaneous amendment bill is finally taken to Parliament, it is going to get favor from the members of the National Assembly. Because at this point in time, everybody knows that private schools are suffering, and it is an open thing for everybody to see. We've had discussions with commercial banks. Before I come into that, I also want to say that we have had very many other discussions with the Senate committee on what needs to be done as far as supporting the private sector is concerned. We appeared several times before the Senate Special Committee on issues of COVID, and we gave our proposals, and we gave them a picture of what private schools are going through across the country. Then number 4, in terms of what we are trying to do to support the private schools, is look at how do we address the issues of commercial banks, so that commercial banks get to understand our sector, our needs, and our interests, as well as the challenges that we are facing, so that as they price their facilities, as they engage us as private schools, they understand that this is a special group that requires very special considerations. And I want to thank KCB, because for the very first time, KCB has come in and agreed to fully work with private schools and support us in as far as issues of credit facilities is concerned. I'm aware that yes, we may be having other challenges with KCB, but we have agreed that they are going to sort out issues that we have as much as we can. They have agreed to give us some flexible repayment. They have agreed to lessen some of the conditions that existed. They have agreed to work with us, and in fact, even as we speak, they have even agreed to work with us and fund the provision of signages so that Mr. Mboro does not have to struggle trying to improvise some of the signages and communication about COVID. KCB has come in and decided to fund us and support us in as far as that is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, I know very well, before I invite KCB, allow me just to finish on what I have here so that, because of time, mention something about human resource. We have been having issues of human resource challenges. And it has been said we have lost very many teachers. We have lost them to other businesses. We have lost them to Teacher Service Commission. Remember when the Teacher Service Commission announced vacancies in TAC, out of the 11,000 vacancies, over 300,000 teachers applied for those jobs. Where did these teachers come from? There were over 300,000. These are from private schools. Most of these teachers are from private schools. Private schools have employed over 158,000 teachers. But then when the Teacher Service Commission announced the vacancies, 300,000 teachers applied for those positions. So we have had a challenge, serious challenge, because some of us were unable to pay our teachers completely. Some of us paid them 10%, 25%, 50%, and all that. And when we have brought in the 18% for primary and 25% for primary, we're talking about what is it that we can be able to pay, what is it that we can be able to afford. And whatever we are paying them, can it be able to sufficiently support their households? Yeah? But I want to encourage all of us, let us be optimistic that things will get back to normal and we are going to continue with the businesses as we've always done. Remember, they say that it is darkest before dawn. So this is our darkest moment. This is our darkest moment. But the moment we get to dawn, everything else will be sorted out. The issue of online learning is something that we must consider as private schools. There is no way about it. Today as we speak, a number of our schools are not engaging the learners because of the challenges of online learning. But I want to tell all of us, going forward, our solution lies in online programs that we are going to set up in our institutions. As Kenya Private Schools Association, we have set up a committee that we are calling the Digital Literacy Program Committee that is going to look at the holistic solution towards online learning and what needs to be done in terms of accessing appropriate, effective digital devices for education, how we can be able to get content. In fact, we have put up a team that is going to look at how we can use our teachers and generate the best content that we can get for basic education. We are trying to look at how can we enhance connectivity in terms of talking to internet providers to ensure that we are appropriately connected so that online learning can continue. We want to make sure that all our schools across the country are smart schools so that we don't have to worry whether learners are in school or at home. But learning continues. And as we give them value, they also pay for that value that we give. So that we don't have to worry. If there is COVID, we can comfortably say, yes, let learners stay at home. If another pandemic comes, we can say, okay, fine, wanaweza kaa nyumbani, but we are continuing with the teaching. The learners continue learning. Today, as we speak, international schools did not close. Their children in September transitioned to the next grade. Why? Because they were grounded on issues of online learning. And they continued with the issues of online learning. So for us, as Private 844, what is it that we are doing? We want to ensure that our classes become smart schools. Again, we have also been discussing and saying, if, for example, you have a school that has 5 streams, is there a way through which one teacher can be able to teach the 5 streams at the same time? Instead of having each class having a teacher teaching different subjects, can we have one teacher teaching mathematics at the same time? Can we have one teacher teaching class 5, whether there are 10 streams or whatever streams, at the same time? These are conversations that we want to have and ask ourselves, what is it that we can do to ensure that we use technology to better our private schools? And that is something that we have to consider. We have to look at issues of devices, content, internet, as well as power, and make sure that we get the buy-in of the parents and provide quality education for our learners. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been told before reopening, we need to invest in COVID-19 management infrastructure and essential supplies. I want to believe that as we move along, we should be able to continue investing in this COVID-19 management infrastructure, because it's important. Because if we're not going to invest and something happens in our institutions, then we'll have ourselves to blame. Because at this point in time, we are dealing with a medical crisis. And a medical crisis requires that we have appropriate preventive measures and appropriate mechanisms to address challenges that may arise. So let us not forget that we need to invest appropriately as guided by the guidelines from the Ministry of Education. We also need to ensure that the health of our staff and the learners is of utmost concern to all of us. And we need to ensure that we link our institutions with a health facility so that in case of an emergency, we are able to respond appropriately. And at the same time, I also want to add that we need to also manage communication that is going out from our institutions. We need to do a lot of management of communication that goes out. Because there is a school that will remain nameless for now, where we had a child who presented with the COVID-like symptoms. And all of a sudden, the entire school was called by the management of the school and said, so-and-so has presented with this COVID symptoms. We want to find out who has been close to learner X. That created panic and confusion in the school. Today, as we speak, the school lost over 70% of its learners because communication was not managed properly. So let us manage communication properly so that we address issues that we have in a manner that will not disadvantage us. The child we're talking about was not even COVID positive. Yeah? It was not COVID, it was COVID negative. But then the damage had already been done. So let us ensure that we manage communication from our institutions in a manner that will not disadvantage the private schools, and ensure that we address issues immediately as they arise. Let us make sure we link our schools to health facilities and we have health people who are able to support us. Another thing that we also want to request all of us is to also consider issues of mental and psychosocial support for our stakeholders. Because we realize that, as Madam has put it, it is a very critical component. Today, as we speak, we are telling our learners not to be close to one another, not to play with each other. We are telling our learners not to share. Yet we have been preaching all along, share, share, share. Now we are telling them, don't share. And the Bible says you should share. It is good to share. But now we are telling them, don't share. So how do we undo what we have always been telling them? So they are confused. So they need a lot of support. Yeah. So Kenya Private Schools Association, again in partnership with KCB Bank, we have been rolling out what we are calling the mental and psychosocial support for private schools across the country, so that we are able to deal with these issues for our learners, our teachers, our parents, and the other non-teaching staff within the school, because it is a critical component that must be addressed. We need to address it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to urge all of us to strictly adhere to the Ministry of Education directives on reopening of schools and wait until given the go-ahead to reopen the other levels. For in-person learning, you continue with online learning and consider it for all the levels, not just one level. Consider online learning for all the levels. But for in-person, let us wait until we are given the go-ahead by the Ministry of Education. At the same time, we don't know which classes will resume in January. I want to believe by that time, COVID will have reduced significantly and all of us will be able to open our schools fully. Again, I want to thank all of you, our members of the association, for your understanding and continued support during this period. Let's have the conversation that will address our needs and support us in getting solutions to the challenges that we face.